Hi, welcome to another session in this Python series. We are going to be looking at loops in Python, but in this session, we are going to be starting with for loops. Loops are fundamental in Python and in almost every other programming languages. What they do is that they allow us to execute a block of code in multiple times. So Python primarily supports two types of loops, the for loops and the while loops. So today we will be looking at the for loops. And what does for loops do? What does for loops do? For loops are used to iterate over a sequence in Python. And sequences include list, tuple, dictionary, and strings. So if we want to iterate over them, we use the for loop usually. What does this mean? Let's look at this small list which contains these names. If I want to access each of these names, like all of them, if I say names, I still have the whole list. So I can just go by index and say, okay, index of 0, I have that, so I can say print names. So I can copy this. Now I can do something like this. This is 0. And then I print it. You can see I've been able to print them out using this. But if I have millions of names, how many hours will it take me to do this? And that is where the for loops come in. So for for loops, I will just say something like this, for. So when I say for, then Python knows that I want to initiate a for loop. So let me say for names in names. That is, anything I put it here is an indicator. I can use any value here, but this must be a variable that contains an iterable. That is, it contains a sequence. Now, and then I put this in front, the colon. Automatically, when I press enter, Python is going to show an indentation, telling me that everything I write inside that indentation is going to repeat it multiple times based on the element of the list. So for name in names, I can say print names, print name. Then it means that Python will go to this first index first, it should print the name, go back to the second index, print the name, to the third, print the name, to the fourth, print the name, and that is all. So let me write that, and you can see now it has printed everything. So I can use anything here. I can use a. So don't answer Python. It's doing what it likes. So for A in names, print A. Good. You see, so as the point is that anything you use here must also be used inside the indentation. Good. So this is looping over a list using the for loop. Let's try the same thing for a tuple. If you watch our data structure series, we talk about tuple, and you will know that whenever we list any element and we put comma in between them without anything like this, open like this in Python, Python will automatically convert them to a tuple. So if I say type of numbers, You see, it's a tuple. So I can loop over it and say for I in numbers, print I. You can see everything is out. So assuming I want to multiply them, I can say print I times 2. You can see now, good. So we can also loop a string. So you can say for I in, or let's say for alph, that is alphabet in name, print alph. And you can see all of them has been printed out one after the other. So let's take a step further. When we have a for loop, we can actually count the number of iterations that we have. This is very important. And we are going to be seeing how this is important as we move forward. So I want to print everything here, but I want to know, because if I have like a million elements in a particular list, and out of that a million, the condition I'm looking for is like 50. So I want to know how many conditions fulfill that criteria and code. So let me say we want a counter. So let me do the for loop first. For I in list, print I times 3, which means that multiply every element of this list by 3. Good. Now, let's count. So let's say we want a counter. You can use any variable, but I'm using the word counter here. So what I want to say is that I want Python to be counting, to be adding 1 to a value here. It should add 1 to a value here each time it loop over any element here. So it's going to start from 0. So I will come down here and put counter plus, so let me say counter equals to counter plus 1. What does it mean? It means that by the time Python loop over this particular one, it's going to get our counter. You know that the counter was initially 0 here. It will add 1 to it. So, and then the counter will become 1. When it loop again over this particular one, it will add another 1 to the counter, which was initially 1. And then like that until the end. Now, let me also write print counter here, so that you can be seeing how Python is counting each of them. And then I will put a space, so that Python will put a space as it is going. So let's run this. What do we have? You can see the first count, the first time Python is counting, you can see now that the element is 3. Because why? Because it multiplied 1 by 3. The second time Python is counting, which is 2, the element is 3 and is multiplying it by 3, making 9. The third time it is counting was on 4, which is 3. 4 times 3 is 12, and like this. So, which means that if we use a for loop, to iterate over a particular sequence, we can use this method to count the number of iteration. Good. Now, we can use this method to do another advanced something. Assuming in this particular task, what I want is that I want to multiply each element of this list by 3. But at the same time, I also want the total of all the sum of that multiples. How can I go with that? So I can say total. So total is 0. But what I want to do is that by the time we have 3, and then the second multiplication is 9. So I want you to add it to 3. 9 plus 3, 12 plus 9 plus 3, 15 plus 12 plus 9 plus 3, and 18 and co. So I want something like that. If I want to do that, it's the same method like this. However, before I go forward, let me do something here. Writing like this is good, but there is a better way to do that. And the way is this. Since it is the same counter that you are adding, so you just say, okay, I want to add to counter, but what am I adding is equals to 1. So you are going to be seeing this thing a lot. When you see this, it's the same thing as counter equals to counter plus 1. So these things will still give us the same thing. So let's run it. You can see it gives us the same thing. So this is a better way of writing it. When you write like this, it shows that you understand the way of Python syntax. Good. Now let's continue what we were doing before. Now total is 0. So I want to come down here and say total plus equals to. Now what am I adding to total? What I'm adding to total is I times 3. But to make it look well, I will just say I will define a variable here called multiple, which is equals to I times 3. So here I will just be printing multiple. So now my total will be plus each multiple. So this is that the first total, our total is 0. So which means when Python loop the first time, there will be 1 times 3. This 1 times 3, add it to this 0. And then when you loop the second time, that the total here has become 3. Whatever you get, add it to it. And then whatever you get again, add it to it. So this concept looks tricky, but if you can try it over and over again by yourself, you will see how it works. And then, so let's print it and see what we have. So we have the counter, we have the multiple, and then let me also print I. So I will use, I think I should use F string here. Let's say that element is, so I, and then multiple is multiple. This should contain this. And then let's print counter. Counter is counter. Now, let's run this. So let me put a space behind them. So you can see When the element is 1, the counter is also the first count, and then the multiple is 3 because we have when 1 times 3. Then when we have when we have 3, the multiple is 9 because it's 3 times 3 and the counter is 2. That is the second iteration. So this is the second element. Then when the element is 4, the multiple is 12 because it's 3 times 4 and the counter is 3 because that is the third element. We have element is 5, the multiple is 15 because 3 times 5 is 15 and the counter is 4. That is the fourth element. Now, we didn't add total. Let's add total 2 and see what we have. Print F. Total is total. So if you do that, now you can see that at the first iteration, total is 3 because it was 3 times 1. By the time we add 9 to 3, by the time we add 9 to it, it becomes 12. We add 12 to 12, it becomes 24. We add 15 to 24, it became 39, and so on until we have our total, which is 57. So if we want to print out, so each of these now has been stored inside this variable. So if I come to another cell and I just write counter, you can see that our counter is 5, that is 5 iteration. If I type total here, you can see that total is 57. So which means that these two variables here can be used in another syntax and it will work perfectly. So this looks a little bit tedious, but believe me, sit down with it, try it yourself, and you are going to get it. It is a matter of time because you are going to be doing a lot of things like this as you continue your journey as a Python programmer.